Hello, everybody, and welcome to Weird Mythic Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. It's me, Naomi, and I'm always with Serena, and we're with our friend Nasario again. Hello, the both of you.
One of these days, you're going to have to let me go home.
No, sorry. No, too entertaining.
I told him today, I called him, I was like, 911, call me ASAP. Called me like 2 seconds later. But I was like, yeah, we're in a pickle. We don't have a guest for this week or whatever. Like, would you be down to record? He's like, yeah, sure. I'm not doing anything. I'm like, yeah, at this point, you're basically our third host. So, like, you're in way too deep now.
That's it.
It's the truth. It's the truth. We needed help. But thanks for, coming on the show last minute and just helping us get this episode this week. So, Nasario does have some, the episode that you were on with Haunted Games, you said that you didn't have that interesting of a life. However, I would say it's pretty fucking interesting considering you have more ghost stories or more paranormal stories than most people in my life.
Yeah, and it's funny too because it's one of those things where, like I said, I don't go out of my way to do stuff. Like, I have friends that they're very much into very amateur ghost hunting. Like, they have their own EMP readers and they go out to like haunted locations and they go specifically like looking for paranormal stuff. That's not me. That's not my life. Okay. And I swear to God, I just like go to work and I come home and like all this weird stuff kind of happens. I know that we kind of talked about this before where we're just going to have an episode where I'm just going to ramble on about like weird stuff that happened.
Well, yeah, ramble on.
To preface this entire conversation, I think it's important to kind of note that, all of these are coming from my perspective, right? So if there was like outside circumstances that I didn't know about, then I didn't know about them. But, I guess we can start with what Serena was curious about, and that's the haunted camel.
Okay, look, I was in the McDonald's drive-thru when I called Nasario, and I was like, hey, dude, we want to have you on an episode where we just talk about, like, your crazy fucking stories that you have, because you have a million of them. He's like, oh, yeah, so casually goes, we can start with the haunted camel. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, so casually. And I'm like, yeah, okay, tell me more. So, go ahead.
Okay, I should also kind of point this out. Serena knows this a bit. Naomi, you probably don't. But I was in the Army for a while. And while I was in the Army, I had suffered some brain trauma where I fell out of an airplane. It was great. I was airborne. It was intentional. I just didn't tuck my head when I landed and I smacked the back of my head on the ground. And it causes my timelines to get jumbled. I know what happens, but I don't exactly remember when it happens. So don't be surprised if like I don't come out here and I'm like on October 5th, 1963. Like, I have no idea when it happened. I just remember the memories.
I know Nasario's birthday. Nasario does not know his own birthday. So just to like verify this, like, it's accurate.
Yeah, it's a thing. You'd be surprised how much you can go through life without understanding like concepts of time. And nobody seems to notice everybody's late for every appointment they go to anyway. So we'll start with the haunted camel. So this was while I was in the Army. I was deployed to Afghanistan 3 times. On one of my deployments, what uniform was I wearing? Every time I went to Afghanistan, I had a different uniform, or a different style of uniform. So I kind of relate when I went to what uniform I was wearing. This has to have been my second time there. Okay, so the second time that I was in Afghanistan, a part of our job was that we would go around to villages and kind of survey people, because we were putting out messages to either inform the population of like events and stuff that are happening in their areas, or to tell them to clear out, or sometimes like if we were going against the enemy, like propaganda and stuff to throw at them. So because we're translating things from a Latin language to like a Middle Eastern language, we had to make sure that our messaging made sense. Like, when we see a stop sign, we know what a stop sign is. But if you show somebody who doesn't have a car a stop sign, they have no idea what that means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we had to make sure that all of our messages were the same. So anyway, while we're out and about doing this stuff, that would send us out to like the farthest reaches of like these little villages, like tucked away in mountains and stuff. And we showed up to a village and they had kind of like an open marketplace that was going on. I guess they had like different other villages around the area coming in. and it was sort of like a big swap meet, basically. So while we're there, I was looking for stuff that I can just kind of bring home, and I found this stuffed camel. It's a small child-sized toy, about the size of like a small teddy bear, and it was this cool camel. It had like a cool saddle that's sewed onto it and everything, and it had a push button on its hand where when you press it, it would sing a song, and it was like a traditional song like in Afghanistan that they would know, right? And so it was really cool. I got it, and I was like, cool, this is going to be my souvenir, right? So we took it back, and we had to put batteries in it. So we slapped batteries in it, and then we started playing it. And when we played it, I didn't realize it, but the eyes glowed red when it would sing. And so it was creepy. And at the time, we were living in like a shared living quarter, so it was like one building with like 7 or 8 of us in there, and so we kind of like sectioned off the room. It was just one big room with like 7 or 8 people there, so we sectioned off the room with like sheets to make like individual rooms. And so there was a running joke in the beginning when we first got the camel that we would hide it in other people's like little sections, and then they would come home and be like, what the fuck is this camel doing here?
Okay, that's just great fun. Come on.
Yeah, it's good fun. Well, eventually jokes get old, and I started keeping the camel on my shelf, like in my room. Sporadically and randomly, it would just start singing. And it would do, like, if you think like the like singing a nursery rhyme in English is terrifying, imagine a nursery rhyme you don't even understand, like in Dari or in Pashtun, whichever language it was. And then of course, as it's singing, you know, you look at it and its eyes are sitting there glowing red, and it was just kind of haunting. So we figured it was kind of a glitch. And then we kind of moved on. About halfway through the deployment, I go back to my room or my little section, and the camel's not there. And so I started looking for it in the other sections, and we found it in another dude's section. And we were like, all right, guys, joke's over. Like, we're not doing this anymore. And everybody claimed that they never moved it. And throughout the deployment, it was constantly moved from my shelf to another part of the hutch where we were at. And it would be randomly singing. It got really annoying because we were like, okay, there's obviously something wrong with it. So we tear it open. We pulled all the batteries out. I stuffed it back on the shelf. And it would continue to randomly sing.
Without the batteries?
No.
Yes, without the batteries, eyes glowing, and it's singing. And it did so that trippy. For months and months until eventually I finally got home. Everybody was saying to get rid of it, which probably I should, but...
Should? As in you still have this camel?
Yeah, it's in my closet right now.
Okay.
So I took it to a local priestess that was a friend of mine when I lived in North Carolina, and she did some magics and basically bound it to another one of my stuffed animals that I have. And so the curse or the spell that was kind of put on it was that as long as those two animals are like together, that the spirit or soul or whatever is inhabiting the camel would not be able to do anything. So... They are literally basically tied together right now. And as long as they have been tied together, it hasn't made a peep or moved on its own since then. So I'm sort of like this keeper of this relic.
Yo, okay. When did you go to the priestess and get it bind with the other stuffed animal?
I mean, pretty much as soon as I got home. Like, I got home, granted, like within a week or so, I started talking to my friends about it because I'm pagan and I have a lot of like spiritual beliefs.
Okay.
And so she was a priestess for like our local order. We weren't really like a coven or anything. We were just like a loose group of pagans that we were all different brands of pagan, I guess. There were never enough of us to form any sort of coven. So we just sort of like celebrated stuff together. And she was sort of like she was the oldest, had the most experience, read the most books, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, pretty much about 2 weeks or so after we got back, we went ahead and did the binding on it, and then it stopped from there. Which is funny because I was telling my roommate at the time about it when I first got home, and he was like, yeah, okay. And then it was like in his room, and it was singing like in the middle of the night. And he was like, get this fucking thing out of my house.
With the red eyes, like.
Yeah, because they would glow and kind of flash as it was singing. So yeah, that's the haunted camel.
That is
oh my
so
gosh,
funny.
dude!
The fact that you still have it is crazy. And you said like your wife won't.
I
Even
love
touch
that.
It, right?
No, yeah. I told her about it, and she was like, "Yeah, okay." And then we were moving because we live in rentals a lot, so we were moving a lot. So she goes to go grab it, and I like instantly like freaked out. I'm like, "No, don't touch it," because she's gonna move it away from the stuffed animal that's tied to it. And she was like, "You're serious?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am serious." And I was like, and while it wasn't dangerous, everybody knows that when you start giving a spirit power, it gets stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need that. I don't need that in my life.
No, you have enough going on.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things too where it's like I like oddities. I like really weird things. Like I would love to have like a skull collection or like a bone collection and stuff like that. I'm not one for like two-headed animals or taxidermy or anything like that, but I do like the weird oddities, medical BS that doesn't actually work and stuff. And so, I kind of saw this as like, this is my like legit oddity thing that I have.
For real.
So I couldn't like get rid of it. Like you don't just throw Annabelle in the trash. You know what I mean? Like
you don't. You definitely don't do that.
You have to donate her to a museum.
But yeah,
no, you gotta get. But they did something to Annabelle too, like some sort of prayer over her. If I remember correctly.
So as long as you don't remove her from the box, like it should be fine.
Should be.
Wow. But yeah, so that was the haunted camel.
Question.
Yes.
I feel like we've talked about it before. You're Native American, right?
Yeah, I'm like Heinz 57. But my father's side of the family was Navajo and Ute.
Okay, so did you have like a lot of stories growing up about stuff like this, or like what makes you so open? Because this is all news to me. I had no idea your like background about this. I just figured, he likes weird shit. But you're like in way deeper than I am. Well,
I mean, okay, so growing up, my dad was very much heavily into Native American stuff. But he never taught me anything.
Okay.
It's one of the reasons why, and Serena, like if you were to see me in real life, and low and shock to everyone who's hearing this, I look very Mexican. My family side is very Spanish.
For the longest time, I'm like, are you sure you don't speak Spanish, Nasario? Like, I need to send you on this call where they only speak Spanish. Are you sure?
And everybody assumes that I speak Spanish. That's how Mexican I look. But the reasoning behind that was because my mom, for two reasons. One, my mom, she grew up only speaking Spanish. And long time ago, like back in the 60s and 70s, if you were a kid and you only spoke Spanish, the teachers would beat you until you spoke English. Yeah. So she vowed that none of her kids would ever have to go through that, so she never taught us Spanish. Aww, well, right. she went to try to teach me Spanish, and then my father threw a conniption fit about it, saying he's not going to learn Spanish unless he learns like Navajo and Ute. So I never learned anything because he didn't know Navajo and Ute. So
what? I don't know it, but that's the only one he can learn.
Yeah, so English, I'm default, and I'm bad at it that's too. Funny. But it was, I don't know. I kind of had this when I was younger. I went and did my sacraments and everything like that for the church. Funny enough, we were raised Irish Catholic because it was the closest church to the house. And I don't know. I just had a problem with some of the way that the church does things, and I started like a religious journey when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I've studied a lot of religion. I've gone to like temple. I was very fortunate in Afghanistan. I got invited to go to a few mosques.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was super cool. Very beautiful places there.
You could very easily pass for Middle Eastern too, honestly. He could be like anything. Like Nasario looks like he could be anything.
It's the skin tone.
My facial hair doesn't grow in enough to like completely blend in, but like if I shave completely, they'd be like, "Oh, he hasn't grown his beard yet."
He's a child.
Yeah, I am but the child. but yeah, and so like it started me on this like big religious journey, and so with that I started like learning a lot about all these different religions, and religion is one of those things. I know you're not supposed to like talk about it because people get political and stuff, but
Okay, that's
I
like
love it.
Naomi's favorite subject, just so you guys know. Like, she went to college for like 17 years just studying like religion.
I didn't go for 17 years. I just kept going and didn't like graduate. I just kept taking classes.
I had a friend of mine that was like that. He was always like 3 classes away from getting like 6 degrees.
Always.
He would just change his
Always.
major at like the last minute. He would always only need like 1 or 2 classes to finish his stuff before he changed his major.
Oh, I feel for that guy.
Well, he was a lifelong student, so like he was getting grants, and that's
Dude.
how he was making money.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
But
yeah.
I met him in the army because his grant money ran out, and he didn't have a way to pay for his apartment, so he joined the army.
I love that so much because I got rid of all my grants by just going to school, and I'm like, oh, I should have used them correctly, and then I had to get a job. I wasn't joining the army.
But yeah, so
wow.
in learning that, you start learning, and you know, Naomi, if you know a lot about religions, a lot of religions, no matter how different they may seem, there are a lot of similarities between religions.
Yes.
They're
I
more
do agree
alike
with
than they are
that.
different. And it could be dealt that, you know, religion steals a lot from older religions, you know, in order to allow people to come together easier. There's all kinds of magic in the world that we utilize on a day-to-day basis that people don't even realize as magic. Like one of the ones that I love pointing out is like the birthday traditions. All that is rooted in yeah. I mean, think about it. You have a piece of food, you put candles on it, you light it. Everybody chants around it, pouring their energy into the cake. The spell is sealed when you blow out the candle by making a wish, and then the cake is divided, allowing everybody a little bit of the energy that they put into it. I mean, birthday traditions are just basically magic. So, in doing that, it's kind of hard to deny that. For as much as I love science and I love hard facts and stuff like that, I think that there's this whole world out there that we just don't have the ability to perceive. And you're, I think, abundantly ignorant to just completely blow it all off and say, just because I can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not true. After all, the mantis shrimp has more cones in their eyes, and they can see like 3 or 5 more colors than we could ever imagine seeing. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean those colors don't exist.
Yeah. No, I think that's very well said.
Yeah. And so I think it also kind of puts me in the mind frame where I'm more open to these kind of experiences and just kind of accepting them as they are, as opposed to like constantly trying to debunk them. Like if anybody ever came up and like properly examined the camel and found out that it was this weird thing, they had hidden batteries on the inside I wasn't aware of and all this other kind of stuff. Okay, cool. I get it. But I'm not one to start digging into it in order to do that. You know, if it is an actual haunting thing, I'm blessed that I kind of got, you know, I got involved in it or I saw it. And, you know, you take your little victories where you can, I guess.
That and you solved the problem. It's not moving around your house and turning on in the middle of the night to scare the shit out of you, you know?
Yeah,
like,
problem solved. I
What
don't
you
need to keep doing
did
anything.
worked. You don't have to keep looking for any type of other either scientifical or, you know, religious or magic, you know, reason behind it. You already got it finished and fixed.
Have you ever thought of like testing it out, like separating them? Or
What? Well, I had thought about that before, and the only reason is because I poorly chose the stuffed animal that was going to be bound to it. I teenage.
Now you gotta tell us what it's bind to.
Yeah, I know. So teenage angst years, I got really into comics, but not like Marvel or anything. I got really into like darker, more depressing kind of comics.
Man, what
like,
is it?
like I used to read a lot of Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. Which is friends of the guy who created Invader Zim. And there was another dude that had made, I think his name was Roman
it's a
Dirge.
Gur stuffed animal.
Oh my god.
No, it's not a
That'd
Gur
be
stuffed animal.
hilarious. Or Angry Beavers for that point. It's the same guy who created that.
Yeah, exactly. So there were 3 friends. There was the guy who made Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. I can't remember his name. There was another dude that made Invader Zim, and there was another guy who created a character called Lenore. And Lenore was probably one of my favorite comics, like growing up. I even have the tattoo of her on my arm. I can show you.
I think I
Serena
know who
one of
you're
these days.
talking about.
Yeah. So I was like obsessed with Lenore. I had all the comics, the hardbacks and all that kind of stuff. And for one of the comics on the back, it said, order your Lenore doll today. So I got a Lenore doll and she fucking followed me everywhere. I took her through like my training in military. She actually went to jump school. Technically, she's jump school certified. So she's like a paratrooper, technically, because she did 5 jumps. but they don't give badges to stuffed animals. And so when it came time to bind the camel, I just chose Lenore, which sucks because I can't have Lenore anymore. She's constantly stuck with the camel, and she's getting very dirty. I mean, it's been years she's been sitting in this closet. You can only imagine just dust settling on her. And I really want nothing more than to take her to go get like to like a doll doctor where they can like patch her up and clean her and redo the stuff. But I don't want to separate her from the camel for fear that the camel's going to reactivate. And I don't have those kind of connections that I did 15, 20 years ago. I can't just go down and find a priest and be like, by the way, can you rebind this? You know what I mean? Like
I
that was sort of like
the
a
other one
favor.
cleaned and
Yeah, by the way, I need them both cleaned and fixed, but you cannot separate them.
like at all. Like they
at
gotta
all.
be next to each other the whole time.
Yeah, and don't look at the camel in the eyes. That's just there's no reason, but I'm pretty sure that that's just not a good thing.
You don't even need to clean the camel at that point. Wow.
But okay,
All
so
right.
beyond that, I also lived in a total of 3 haunted houses.
All right.
So these are like more shorter stories because there's not a lot to go with them. But the first one, my grandmother used to have. It was a garage apartment. Like they converted a garage into like an apartment. And that was at my grandmother's house. We had lived there for a little while, and that was like I guess my childhood home, if you can call it that. And nothing really happened there. There were a few instances where things were broken in the house, and my mom would blame me because I would be in the room when they broke. I would swear up and down that I didn't break them, and then she didn't believe me because I was kind of very clumsy as a kid. So in particular, she used to have like this 2 or 3 foot tall like porcelain owl statue that sat at the bottom of the stairs. I was driving my RV car because I'm a kid and I'm an idiot, like down the stairs. And so it was going down the stairs. I didn't get anywhere near the owl, and then it just toppled over and broke. So I'm guilty by association, But beyond like stuff like that, the biggest instance occurred right before we moved out. And I have a feeling that we moved out because of this instance. So my mom and my stepdad, I would say they used to go out drinking a lot. They still do. They love partying. So they had gone out. They were having a good time. They were out there drinking and having a good time. And then they came home. So my mom went and sat down in this big chair that she had in her room. It was, just the big comfy chair that you sit in. So she's sitting in there and she passes out in the chair because my stepfather had gone to the bathroom to like take a shower before they go to bed, right? And she was waiting for him to get out of the restroom. But while she was waiting, she passed out in the chair. Well, she woke up to my stepdad freaking the fuck out, like shaking her and being like, "Hey, babe, get up, get up." And she was like, What do you want? Because she was like blackout drunk. And he was like, "Babe, I think you need, like, did you start?" And so she's like, "Did I start what?" And she looks down and she's got a pool of blood sitting in her lap. And so she was like, "Oh crap, like, did I start? Like, did I bleed through my pants and stuff?"
Yeah.
Well, she kind of did the girl thing of, "Oh, Jesus," and like put her head back like against the headrest of the chair, and she could see the ceiling and there's blood dripping from the ceiling.
What?
It was a pool of blood on the sheetrock, and it was just slowly dripping into her lap.
The hell?
So they obviously freaked out. She sent my stepfather upstairs because we were thinking like it was like a dead cat. Something had got up there and died.
Go upstairs, go check it out.
Couldn't find anything. So they had to go and remove the sheetrock. And when they cut the sheetrock out, because it's stained the ceiling. When they cut the sheetrock out, the back of the sheetrock was regular. There was no staining on it. The staining was on the underside.
That's some supernatural shit. Like episode 1, season 1 of Supernatural.
That shit don't happen but in movies.
Shortly after that, we moved out.
Like, so that was too much for mom and dad to handle. Let's leave.
Yeah, I was like, see, there's a ghost.
Trippy.
I told you I didn't break anything,
Oh,
That's
wow.
crazy.
The fact that there was nothing, like, absolutely, and it, like, for somebody, like, think about it. You take a shower for, like, and you're drunk. So it probably takes a good 20 minutes to take a shower. And then he comes out and, like, how much blood for him to see to scare him to have to wake her up? Yeah, that's a lot of blood.
It wasn't like a drop or two. Like
pool.
her pants were stained, and it literally looked like you had like a cup of water and like just poured it in her lap, which is why he was like kind of freaking out about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And and it's funny because like thinking back, and all this is the power of hindsight, right? Because I wasn't thinking about this then. I was a kid.
Right.
While we were in that house, that's also where I had my imaginary friends too.
Stop
now,
it.
I can't say that my imaginary friends were ghosts and I actually whatever, but like I was also a kid that, along with this new brain thing that I got from the military, I was also born with ADHD and stuff like that. So a lot of like what I perceive, I don't know if it's part of an overactive imagination or not. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to sit here and say I had an imaginary friend that was a ghost, but considering all the events that are lining up, it wouldn't surprise me if that was where the spawning of my imaginary friends had came, because after we left the house and I moved into the new neighborhood, I didn't really have imaginary friends after that.
So my daughter had an imaginary friend, and we're going to have to do an imaginary friend episode. His name was Bidu, and she used to talk to him and play with him all the fucking time. And like...
Yeah, and that's the same with me. My imaginary friend's name, like I used to have, and my mom still has them. I had 3 stuffed animals growing up. It was like a dragon. His name was Puff from Puff the Magic Dragon. Mm-hmm. I had a dog named Ralph for some reason. Had nothing to do with the Muppets. I just named him Ralph. And then I had like a little kid like doll, like the plastic head, stuffed body kind of like doll, you know. And I named him Nachito. And which is a weird name for a kid to like name something, right? And my mom was always kind of weirded out about it. So when I got older, she told me that Nachito was actually the nickname of her father. But I had never known her father. Her father had died like long time before I was ever born. So one day I'm just grabbing the doll and I'm like, "Oh, this is Nachito." And she was like, "What did you say?" Like, are you sure?
I just got full body chills.
I love that so much, though. That's just cool, I think. Out of nowhere.
Yeah, just out of nowhere, I just named him Nachito, and as it turns out, like, that's not a common name. It's not like I named him Jim or something, you know what I mean? And then, like, I guess another kind of in the same line of, like, communicating with, like, past ghosts, my uncle was paraplegic. He was a criminal, and used to do, like, drug running and stuff like that when he was younger. And one day, funny enough, one day he was at the laundromat doing laundry, and he got mistaken for another criminal and was shot in the back by a police officer. And it paralyzed him. He became paraplegic at that point. Which is funny that he paid for being a criminal, but he was the wrong criminal, even though he had a really bad past, So he used to live with my grandmother, and he was pretty much solely dependent on her. He just did not take care of himself after that. I mean, his will to live was basically gone. And the one thing that we always kind of knew about him was that he would have like the colostomy bag thing, like to pee in. So he always smelled like old pee. And, that's not some for his poor hygiene, but, par for the course.
But it's something you're gonna remember that as a kid. You're gonna remember
exactly.
Smells.
That was
that's what that smells like,
Well, after he passed away, me and my mom would be sitting around, and you would just get like massive hits of like stale pee smell like through the house, and like it would hit and then leave. And my mom was like a complete neat freak. We didn't have any pets or anything like that at the time, so we couldn't like blame it on anything else. All of a sudden, she would sit there and we'd smell it like a stagnant pool in the middle of summer. Like it would just be so hot, and then it would go away. And my mom always kind of found this weird comfort in that, because it reminded her, and she was convinced that was our uncle, like, checking in on us.
Well, that's nice, but what an awful smell to, like, linger.
Yeah.
But
like,
you're
I'm going to go to my siblings.
What
will they remember me for? Oh, I know. I smelled like pee.
Don't remember that.
So, it's going to be like tacos for me. They're going to be like, yep, the bitch is here. I smell tacos.
So that was that one. When I was in the military, I had you can live on the base with like roommates, and it sucked. So me and a couple of guys, we got together and we rented an apartment outside of the base, and it was kind of like the party house. That's kind of where we hung out. My roommate, I had 2 roommates at the time. and one of them was dating this chick who, after the fact, we found out that she was bipolar and something else. My personal belief is that she was possessed.
Oh my god.
Oh, okay, I'm really interested now.
Okay, so I'll lay out the story. So
cool. Okay.
we're all hanging out, and it's Halloween one year, and we decided we weren't going to throw a party or anything. We're just going to chill at the house. So we're chilling at the house, watching horror movies and stuff, and she gets super bored. And she was like, hey, I got a Ouija board. We should play Ouija board. Immediately, I was like, yeah, we're not playing Ouija board. Or I'm not playing Ouija board. I've played those games before. Not going to happen anymore. And a lot of pagan... Yes.
I got a question. Which country were you in?
Well, I was here in the States.
Okay, that's what I was like. Were you here in the States or were you somewhere else? That's why I was like, you said you were on base, but outside of base. So I just wanted to clarify for myself. Thank you.
Yeah. We were in the States. So she was like, yeah, I got this Ouija board. So we're like, okay, I'm not going to play that. So they bring it in, and I was like, okay, look, you guys may not care about this because they were all like in the Catholic Baptist kind of faiths. And I was like, I know you guys don't believe what I believe, but spirit boards, even though like the actual Ouija board itself was designed like in the 60s or 50s or something like that, I was like, the idea of a spirit board has been in tradition as long as we can have had the ability to write anything.
Correct,
and so a lot of people used it as a medium. A lot of people used it as a medium in order to try to see the future or to predict things that happened or to reach to the beyond and try to find answers that they couldn't find. So I was like, look, I'm not going to stop you guys from playing this game, but if you play it, there are rules that I would like you to abide by. And they were like, okay, fair, you know? And I was like, rule number 1, don't fucking invite anybody into this house.
Great. That's perfect.
Okay.
Rule 1, don't invite nobody.
Yeah. And I was like, rule 2, you should probably not ask questions like, how did you die or anything along those lines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Solid so far,
then,
solid.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then rule number
Good
3
rules.
is that when you are done, everybody say goodbye and you close it.
Yes.
You close it out.
the circle. Close the
They
circle
said-
is like the biggest thing. Like people don't do that.
And they said,
It's
sure,
still there.
no problem. Guess what 3 rules
Okay.
they didn't abide by?
Of course.
All of them. All of them.
So,
Like, come on.
like,
It's also
straight up in the
Halloween.
beginning-
They're gonna find the spookiest thing they can find at this moment.
I know. Straight up in the beginning, they're trying it. It's not really working that well. And the girlfriend was like, oh, well, maybe it's like bad reception. So she invites the spirit in, hoping to get like a better reception, I guess.
What?
They get a better
No.
reception. And they start asking
get better
stupid questions like,
reception.
how did you die? What was your name? You know, what happened? And then they got bored and just got up and left. So I woke up the next day and the Ouija board's still on the table with all their stuff. And I'm like, dude, what the hell? Like,
They didn't follow any of your rules, and you have
Zero
solid rules.
rules.
Solid.
and I'm like, all of you failed. So after that occurrence, we started having problems in the house. So, I think there were 2 ghosts that were living in our apartment. Okay. One of them we named Bob, and the other one I refused to give it a name. Okay. So in the apartment, we had like this big 55-gallon trash can that we would like. That's like the trash can for the apartment, right? And there were certain days that we wanted to take the trash out to the dumpster because any days beyond those, the dumpster was too full, and the apartments would get mad if you like throw the trash outside the dumpster, right? So on those trash days, my roommate, the one with the girlfriend, he would leave early, so he would never take out the trash because it made quite a bit of noise. Me and the other roommate, we always forgot about it. So we would come home and be like, oh crap, we forgot to take out the trash. And by then the dumpster's full and it was a big mess. So Bob, who we named Bob, would move the trash can from the corner where it was at to the center of the room every time it was trash day. I woke
That's
up.
pretty cool.
Yeah, I woke up and I stepped
What
out
a
of my
helpful
room
ghost.
and the trash can was like right in front of us. And at first I was like, oh, look at my other roommate being very passive aggressive about this, right? So
Right.
I got the trash and I threw it out. And then I put the trash can back. So when I got home, I was like, all right, I get it. We got to take the trash out. And he was like, yeah, I saw you guys took the trash out. Good job. And we're like, well, yeah, because you moved the trash can. And he was like, no. And so nobody admitted to it. And I swear to God, every week we would go to bed and the trash can would be in the corner, and when we would wake up, it'd be in the center of the room.
That's
so we were
great.
always like, "Thanks, Bob."
Very cool.
Like, thanks, you're helping us out, dude. You know?
Yeah, that's a good roommate right there.
Yeah. The second ghost, after that, I started getting night terrors. And they would all basically be the same. I would be laying face down because I used to like hug my pillow when I would go to sleep. And I would wake up and feel somebody sitting on my legs. And it would feel like their hands were reaching into me and grabbing my kidneys and squeezing them. Like, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. It was just like pain just shooting through my body. And eventually I would come to enough to where I can move, and it would all of a sudden feel like all the weight's off, and then I can breathe again,
Right.
and all the pain would instantly go away. And it happened at least once, maybe twice a week until I moved out. And then as soon as I moved out, I didn't change my sleeping habits or anything. It all went away. So the possession. So
Yes. Okay. To the creepy girlfriend. Got
right.
it.
So I had only lived in the apartment maybe like 3 or 4 more months after the Halloween incident. Okay. So I'm living with night terrors for like 3 or 4 more months. Since then, the girlfriend started getting more and more crazy, and my roommate would always kind of blame it that, oh, she's bipolar, you know? But she was getting like extraordinarily possessive. And like for a while there, we couldn't even talk to our roommate because she would like try to get in the middle of everything. Well, one day he comes home early because he used to go to work early. He would come home earlier than all of us. So he would come home and she was sitting in the living room. She did not have a key to our apartment. She broke in.
Ooh.
And so he
that's
was
not
like,
cool.
what happened? Like, obviously worried, right?
Yeah.
Like, what, what's going on?
Mhm.
She had grabbed a frying pan, knocked him out, dragged him to her car, threw him in the trunk, and just started driving 2 states, like a state away. Yeah, a state away. She pulled over to go get gas, and he was waiting for the car to stop. So she pulled over, was to get gas. She walked inside. He opened up the trunk from the inside and like bolted. And then he ended up like
Dude.
calling the cops, and he was like legitimately kidnapped. She took off.
Wow.
Never heard anything from her after that.
That is terrifying.
What, like not even like the cops never caught her. She never tried to like come back to the apartment.
No, she never came back. And shortly after that, I left and I moved on. But like we were still friends, like the 3 roommates. And yeah, I never heard anything else. Like I don't know if they ever caught her or they did anything with her. She didn't like live with us or anything. But yeah, we never saw her again. And every now and then I would ask him, be like, "Hey, have you ever heard from so and so?" And he'd be like, "No, man." After he fucking took off, he
Wow.
never saw her again.
Well, that's good though.
I'm
Yeah.
glad he's okay. Like, because that could have went a whole different like
That's
way.
like a true crime
but,
podcast
wow,
at that point.
That's
Yeah.
insane. Wow. Huh.
So I guess you could say like, oh, she was off her meds or whatever, but at the same time, it's like she was always a little bit crazy, but it was always like a tolerable level. And then after that incident, she just like fell off the rails. And
It
so
like
I'm like,
escalated.
exactly, like extremely escalated. And so yeah, it putting 2 and 2 together,
Wild.
you know what I mean?
Huh. I think it's very interesting that because the whole night terrors thing, the fact that as soon as you moved out, that you stopped having the night terrors.
Yep. Like literally the next day, I had night terrors the day before. We move out, go to sleep. It was years before I had any more night terrors after that, and they were always like really minor. Like I wake up, I'm frozen, I can't move, but there's a thing in the corner that I think is staring at me, but it's a shadow,
Yeah.
and then eventually I wake up. Terrifying,
And you
yes, but that was about it. But then,
And you haven't had any night terrors with something feeling like it's sitting on you, grabbing your kidneys, so, like specifically.
no, not that specifically. No,
Yeah.
sitting on me, yes, but that's where I get into the night terrors where that Serena had already told you about that one.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
the wife's melting face, if I remember correctly.
yes.
That's so crazy.
That was a whole. Oh my god, that was a whole like crazy thing in and of itself. Did she tell you about the one that I had like immediately after that?
I'm not sure.
I don't think you told
Okay.
me about that.
Okay, so there was the one with my wife. Like I had a
Right.
night terror, and it was this thing that was choking me, right? And then I knew my wife was supposed to come home, This is like the quick version, since if you guys have been listening, they've already kind of told the story. And if you haven't, you should. This is a good excuse to go back and listen through the podcast to find it. Okay.
Every episode. I'm not going to tell you what episode it is.
Yeah, we're not going to tell you which episode. You're going to have to find. It's like this cool Easter egg that you can like flaunt in people's faces. You're like, I found it. Leave a comment down below if you know what episode it is. Just don't say the episode name. That'd be great. So then I knew my wife was coming home because she worked night shift and she was about to get home. So I'm sitting there having this thing choking me, and I knew that I was having a night terror, that there was nothing actually choking me, that I'm just having a night terror, right? So I knew that if I saw my wife, maybe I could try to signal her to let her know that something's wrong. So the door opens and closes. I hear her car alarm, like where she locks her door. She comes down the stairs and she walks in and goes right to the bathroom. She doesn't even notice me, right? And I'm sitting there like, help, 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 like trying to like flag her down. And then she comes over to check on me and she's like, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, she's like, oh my God, you're having like a night terror. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, here, let me help you. And then she shoved her whole hand down my throat. And like her face started melting. And while she's doing it, and I'm just like, no, like complete terror. Then I woke up. And came to, and there was nobody there. My wife hadn't even came home yet. So I'm like, oh God, that was horrible, right? So I roll over and I'm just trying to go back to sleep because this isn't my first rodeo with night terror. Sometimes you just need to force yourself to go back to sleep, and then you'll finally get some rest, right? So I'm laying down and I'm trying to get some rest. I had the little light on, and I had like a little lamp next to our desk. I'm saying this like as if you know the layout of my, like where I used to live. Right. So I had this like tiny little lamp next to my desk that my wife would sometimes use. She does not like sleeping in the dark. So we have it when we have to turn off all the lights. So I turned it on just in case, right? It's hard for shadow creatures to get you if you can't make a shadow, And I'm laying there and I start having another night terror. And my wife came in and she sat down next to me and she was like, are you okay? And I was like, oh my God, like I snapped out of it, and she's sitting on the bed, right? And I'm like, oh my God, I just had another night terror. And she was like, it's not a night terror, it's just spiders. And she pulled back the cover and I'm just covered in spiders.
Oh my gosh.
And I start like shrieking and I look over, and we used to have these blinds that would cover like the whole windows because we had like French doors. And there were just spiders like streaming out from underneath it and like crawling towards me. And then I woke up again and my wife still wasn't home. And I was like, well, fuck sleep tonight, I guess. Like,
yo, no, not a night terror. You're so funny. It's just spiders. Surprise. Like, no.
Yeah.
It would be like when she came home, seriously, I'd be like, I don't trust you, lady. Like,
dude, I told her too. I told her about that. And I was like, I don't trust you. And she's like, I didn't even do anything. And I was like, I understand the women that get mad at their boyfriends for cheating on them in their dreams. I get it now.
Like, that shit was horrible.
I don't know. Yours is a little worse than like
wild.
My man cheating on me in my dreams.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather have that than fucking spiders everywhere.
Yeah. No.
Dude. And that was in the last haunted house. That was in the house that we just moved out of, Serena.
Fun. So was that recent?
Yeah.
Then?
So. Yeah, it was that recent. Well, I mean, I say that recent. I was living in that house for like almost 10 years.
Oh, okay.
But when we first moved in, did I tell you about the little door underneath the staircase?
Yes, you told me about that. That your mother-in-law or something was like, let's open it. Yeah. So So for people who don't know this, which I assume is like a majority of people out there, or not, stalker, that I'm very Hispanic. My wife, she looks Hispanic, but she's English. She was like born in Peru, and she got raised in England. And so all of her family is white. And so the running joke is with us is, that white people do dumb stuff in like scary movies, right? So yeah. Serena's like, yeah, thanks. So we move into this house and we're moving stuff in, and there's like a closet underneath the door, sort of like a little Harry Potter closet, right? So we open that up and we're using that as a storage space. Well, at the very back of the closet where it gets like the shortest, like you gotta imagine like it's regular room size and then it cuts down into an angle because of the angle of the stairs, right? So at the very smallest part in the back, there was a door and it was nailed shut. And I looked at it
And I told my wife, I was like, are you seeing that? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, can we agree we're never going to open that door? And she's like, 100% we're not opening that door. And I was like, okay, great. I'm glad we agree. And I was like, we need to keep your family away from this room.
Huh.
And she was like, why? And I was like, because white people do dumb shit like opening up mystery doors in new houses.
I'm guilty of that. I am that white person. I am that white person. I want to know what's behind that door.
Yeah, my wife was like, no, that's stupid. And I was like, it's a horror movie trope for a reason. We need to keep your family away. As soon as I said that, her mom rounded the corner and was like, oh, what's that little door? And started like beelining towards us to open it. And we were like, get away from there. And so we started laughing about it, and she was like, that's not funny. And then her brother was helping us move in. He looked at the door and immediately beeline towards it. Hey, what's behind this door? And we're like, dude, seriously, what the hell's wrong with all of you?
I just want to let everybody know that that thought would never cross my mind, okay?
And the moment I saw the door, I was like, yep, that's a whole nightmare room I am never going to see.
There's like a doll sitting behind the door or something. Like, that's my first thought.
Me and my wife always used to joke that we would open the door, it would open to a much bigger room that expands beyond the borders of the house, and it would just be an empty room with claw marks on the walls and a chair slowly spinning in the middle. And that's what we kind of envisioned was behind the little door. We still have, to this day, have no idea what was behind the door. Good. We never opened it ever.
Good.
I am so curious.
Yeah, and we piled a bunch of crap.
I want to know what it is. I do. I want to come over and go into the door.
Well, we were living there for about a year or two, and the master bedroom was downstairs, and we had like other bedrooms that were upstairs. And so my son was had his room, and he used to we would go put him to bed, and then in the morning we would find him on the couch, like asleep. Mm-hmm. And he would like refuse to go to bed. If we made him go to sleep on the couch, no problem. He would just go to sleep on the couch, but he used to refuse to go to his room. And so finally we were like, dude, what's going on? Like, why don't you want to go to this room?
Yeah.
Right? And he was saying that the lady in the attic keeps him up at night.
Fuck
his room
that.
Had the pull down access to the attic.
Oh gosh.
And so he would say that at first it started moving, and he would hear a lady behind there, and he would get so scared that he didn't want to sleep in his room, and so he would just go sleep in the living room.
I just got really scared for him.
Yeah, so
I got like butterflies.
We had an extra room, so we put him in the extra room. And my daughter was getting a little too big for her room. Like, one of the rooms was very, very small. Like, it's a perfect like nursery size room, but it's not very good for like a young kid, right? It's just too tight. Mm-hmm. So she wanted to move into the empty room, which was her brother's. We didn't really tell the kids about this, right? We were just like, Michael, keep this to yourself kind of thing. Because panic spreads, and we don't need 3 kids freaking out about nothing, right? Jumping at shadows. She moved into the room and immediately started sleeping back in her old room. And she was like, I don't like the door. And she's talking about like the door for the attic. And so we were like, okay, that's enough. So I went and grabbed a bunch of sage, and I purified the house. We had to do it 2 or 3 times. All the night terrors and stuff happened before we saged the house. After we saged the house, everything was fine after that.
Well, that's good, but you guys are you're like the most terrifying family I've ever come into contact with.
You know, which is funny because I was talking to my wife, and I was like, I told her, I was like, would you move into a haunted house? She's like, babe, we have lived in a haunted house. And I was like, yeah, but I mean like a legit, like a real
willingly, like wanting to move into one.
Yeah, and she was like, yeah, I guess it just depends. Like, we both like horror films and horror nuts and stuff like that, and the occult doesn't necessarily scare us. Ghosts don't scare me as much as like there are other things out there that I think that are way worse than ghosts, you know? Those things terrify me, but like regular dead people walking around, if, you know, we have a chick walking around with their head cut off because whatever, like, okay, whatever, lady, just flush the toilet, and when you're done, wash your hands, you know?
You're too casual.
You know,
about
we
this
are
shit.
a shared living community here. We all got to pitch in, you know? You can't be haunting if you're not paying the rent. You know what I mean? Like,
everyone can be like Bob, okay?
Yeah, I know. I have these high expectations for ghosts. I'm like, yo, you're not as good as Bob used to be. And they're like, who the hell is Bob? You know?
The bar
He
so
devils with
high.
the trash. All you do is wail all night and keep me up, you know?
Here, at least remind me to do shit around the house. Come on.
But
That's
yeah,
crazy.
so that's a great majority of the stuff that happened. There were a bunch of like other like little incidents here or there, but those are like the main bigger stories of stuff that I've kind of had to bear witness through to my life. So
Well, I'm so
All
glad that
right.
you went through it, so I don't have to.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, letting us know that, shit's real. Because damn, that's scary.
yeah, it's awesome. Like I don't, it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't doubt that there are places that just because they're run down, people think that they're scary and it's actually a rat running across or whatever.
Right.
But there are things that, I think you can't really ignore everything. And it is kind of cool to think that, like, even if only one of the things that I have experienced turns out to be paranormal, that's one thing that proves it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
So yeah, it is this weird kind of scary hope that maybe there is something other than, what we can perceive, which, also leads to like life after death kind of experiences, kind of things.
Yes.
That if ghosts exist, then there has to be something once we leave this mortal coil. You know what I mean?
Wow. Give
Yeah.
everyone something to ponder until next week's episode.
Well, thanks again, Nasario. We're going to have to hear more of your creepy stories if you're willing to give us more, because that's awesome. I love hearing firsthand accounts.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. Well, should we say goodbye? I guess that should be it. I didn't realize we've been talking this long.
Alright, well,
Yeah,
let's mention.
I talk a lot.
Yeah, he does. It's true. He calls me just because he misses talking to me all the time at work, and I'm like, "Go to your job." I want to mention the code though. We have a 10% off code for our merch. It's code SPOOKY SPOOKY. Good till October 31st. You guys can go get our awesome merch that people are actually buying it now. It's crazy.
Yeah. Thank you guys for helping. That's awesome. I love seeing that. Thank you. Thanks for all of the support. And of course, you can get the link to that. Exactly. Take it away, Serena.
Okay, yeah. Instagram, Weird Mythic Podcast. And then you can visit us on Twitter at Weird Mythic. And send us an email of any of your creepy encounters. If you guys have ever lived in a haunted house, if you guys know someone named Bob, you can let us know that too. At weirdmythicpodcast@gmail.com.
Yep. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.